I joke that mental health is not a rash. I wish it was. I wish I could give a cream and the rash would go away, and that would be amazing. For me, I will live the rest of my life with pure obsessional OCD, and it sucks, and I hate it. But it also is a lot better if I use the right words and don't hide behind the veil of I'm fine, I'm good, or I am just having panic attacks, which I did for the longest time. No, it was panic attacks because of this.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, a free safe space for people to share and learn from others' experiences with mental health and addictions. I'm Todd Runnebaum, suicide attempt survivor and a recovering substance abuser. This week I'm speaking with the incredible Dr. Shahana Alibhia. She is in British Columbia, I want to say Vancouver. She has just written a new book entitled Feel Better, How Understanding Your Emotional Palette Can Keep You From Getting Swept Away. And that's available Amazon and everywhere else you can buy books. Today, Dr. Alibhia and I talk about postpartum depression, anxiety, OCD. The really wonderful thing about Dr. Alibhia is that she's struggled and has lots of experience of her own with OCD and with postpartum anxiety. And she's exceptionally wonderful because she works with youth, underprivileged youth actually. But I'll let her talk about all that. And just so you know, I'm kind of not doing as much stuff on YouTube anymore. I was never really planning on doing YouTube. It was going to be just strictly an audio podcast. But of course, people tell me I should have something on there. So I started doing that, and I feel it's taken away from the quality of the audio podcast, which is really where my heart is set. And YouTube sucks because, you know, you're not allowed to say certain words. You get demonetized or threatened to have your video taken down or even your channel taken down for using words like suicide or, you know, things about drugs and stuff. And it's, you know, how do you have an open, candid, honest conversation about mental health without saying some of these words? So, yeah, I'll probably put shorts and stuff like that on there. Short is a short YouTube video. It's not clothing. Well, I mean, it's clothing, but anyway. So with that said, the audio is going to be, I feel like the quality is going to improve, and yeah. So please feel free. Actually, I encourage you to share and like and to rate and review the audio podcast, and just let the world know that there's a free mental health service called Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. Anywho. Without further ado, I give you Dr. Shahana Alibhia. I've heard of postpartum depression. I've heard of even postpartum OCD.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard the anxiety.
Okay.
Or is it all just the same stuff?
It's all related to each other. And for me, mine stemmed from postpartum OCD, but they're all shades of gray from each other. So super difficult to, like, this is why we need to be having this conversation, because nobody wants to have it. And I've seen the repercussions of what happens when we don't have these conversations. So no, I'm happy to dive into that.
Did you know anything about postpartum anxiety or depression or OCD or any of this stuff before you started having children?
Well, I'll tell you the truth, which probably is a refreshing thing to tell you. So the truth was that since the age of 4 or 5, I started experiencing symptoms that I didn't know obviously what they were. They were horrible. Now I can call them intrusive thoughts of harm coming to my family, and more importantly of what if I caused harm to my family, and it would cause you this like nauseating feeling. I was 5 years old. I didn't know what this was. A lot of repetitive type thinking. So I did what any child does, and I talked to my mom about it, and she obviously, this is like 30 plus years ago, she didn't know what it was, so she did the best she could at the time. That parlayed into an eating disorder. Now I know as a physician that OCD and anorexia go hand in hand, very, very commonly go hand in hand. And anorexia became a wonderful scapegoat to let it gave me a break from the OCD, because all I focused on, anorexia has nothing to do with food, it has everything to do with control, right?
Right.
So it was wonderful, and I use that in big quotation marks, to control how much I ate and feel like I was winning some days. As soon as my mom caught wind of what I was doing, like any parent, she got very concerned. And then my diet became under a microscope a little bit, so I switched to excessive exercising. So you see, all obsessive related types of things. So finally, when I went into medical school became the perfect distraction because all I could do was obsessively do something, which was study, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if many people in medical school have either anxiety, depression, OCD, one of these types of things too. So having a background history of what now I would come to know as pure obsessional OCD, which is I didn't have the compulsions, I wasn't washing my hands, I wasn't checking locks, I wasn't doing anything of that sort. It was all up here. Pure OCD is a subtype of OCD, much less common, but that is the most favorable type of OCD in the postpartum period. So if you have a pre-existing history and you go and have a baby, very much likely you're going to have postpartum OCD. But I did what every doctor does and thought, perfect, I'm going to ignore it because that's what I thought was best. So in medical school was when I figured out, like 20 years later, a psychiatrist was giving us a lecture, and on an asterisk, like below the slide in very tiny letters, was subtype of OCD, pure OCD. So I called my fiance and I'm like, I think this is it. Like, I think this is what I have. Up until that point and up until my mid-20s, I just kind of shelled off that part of my life and directed all of my attention to studying, focusing, being the best, being the best. And then I had to go through my psychiatry rotation, and I'll never forget, there was 2 patients, one with pure OCD and one with bipolar. I gave the chart of the OCD to my friend and I said, you go see her. I'm going to go see the bipolar patient because I couldn't come. It was too close to home. And yeah, with the birth of my first son, it wasn't just a reconciling of the diagnosis. It was a reconciling of my entire life and what had led up to that point. So when I say I hit rock bottom, I truly mean that in all senses of the word. And I did all I knew, which was go back to work because I couldn't be the home mom. I didn't know how. And the OCD was, I'll be honest, pure obsessional OCD relates a lot in the postpartum period to could you cause harm to your child. So what do? You start avoiding your child because you're legitimately scared. I didn't talk to anybody. I kept it a secret. And it wasn't until I felt like my family would be better off without me there. And that was a really comforting thought. Like
Was this a suicidal thought?
Oh yeah, completely.
Okay.
Completely.
Not just like I'm going to move out. It's like
no.
Right,
like
right.
literally, like that the best course of action was for me physically not to be here anymore. And the ironic part is that I deal with suicidality as a physician all the time when I deal with adolescents and I deal with mental health, but I couldn't connect the dots. Like literally, I was like, no, for me, good idea. For you, not a good idea kind of situation. Right. And that's the honest truth. And it wasn't until I was really starting to formulate how I might end my life that I realized that this is it. Like I need to do something about it. So I picked up, there's an anonymous physician helpline, like the helpline for physicians. I picked up that call.
Oh, secret hotline.
Secret hotline for physicians and saved my life, really. And I remember the lady on the other end, she's like, you're going to need to see a psychiatrist. And like, you're going to need to do counseling and do medication. And I'm like, you know what? This conversation has helped me so much. I feel so much better. Like
I'm cured.
I'm cured. Like, don't talk to me about because that's the thing, right? If you were a patient with mental health, I was going to go to bat for you. I was going to advocate for you and write prescriptions for you. But the minute it was about me, absolutely not. Because the banner on my forehead was too good for this, right? Let's be honest. That's what it's all about. That I thought I was too good for it, too educated for it, too privileged for it. List goes on and on. But that's a hypocrite. That's the definition of a hypocrite. But it was so many layers of trying to unpack all of that, especially because it had happened since my childhood. And that began the beginning of the story. And I joke that mental health is not a rash. I wish it was. I wish I could give a cream and the rash would go away, and that would be amazing. For me, I will live the rest of my life with pure obsessional OCD, and it sucks, and I hate it. But it also is a lot better if I use the right words and don't hide behind the veil of I'm fine, I'm good, or I am just having panic attacks, which I did for the longest time. No, it was panic attacks because of this. So the truth helps a lot in shedding that stigma because I'm tired of living with that.
So you're a doctor. Are you a psychiatrist?
No, family doctor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it would have been a tough pill to swallow to be like, I have to see a doctor? I
Say
am a
what?
doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
I just needed a phone call.
I just did exactly. Well, what I did end up seeing, there's like the reproductive psychiatrist, a psychiatrist who deal with women in the postpartum period. So I drew her a color-coded diagram of all my symptoms, and she looks at my husband and goes, like, is she always like this? And my husband's like, yeah, she's always like this.
So when you were having those suicidal thoughts and that, how long ago was that?
Oh, so my eldest is 9 years. Yeah, about 9 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been some time. So, but the OCD is still there, obviously.
Actually, I was just diagnosed about a year and a half ago with ADHD, and so I'm learning a lot about that and neurodiversity, and I've learned that OCD is also, or people with OCD are considered neurodivergent as well. Thing is, what I don't know about OCD, and I've had conversations before about this, but I just never thought of it to now. Is it like ADHD where it's like a hardwired thing, or is it like a trauma-based thing, and like is it like a personality disorder that you kind of
Good question.
create?
Yeah, very good question. Yeah. So they've done
Thank you.
that show on fMRI scans that people with OCD have a loop in their brain that they were quote unquote born with, basically, right? So it is very much that nature versus nurture. The the nature thing is very high. And of course, and it's even been linked to things like recurrent strep A infections. Like, there are these weird types of things that can add fuel to the fire too. But from my understanding, there is a link in the brain of kind of where that pathophysiology starts.
Oh, so it's a little of both.
Yeah, totally.
It's like you have a recessive gene or something, and then for whatever trauma happens or whatever happens in your life, then it like turns on this thing, and you kind of go down that path road as opposed to someone else becomes a narcissist, you become BPD or
exactly.
addiction or whatever.
Yeah, and I think if you ask any doctor about any disease, they will always say there's genetic factors and then there's environmental factors. Like that's the standard line, right?
Right.
For so many things that do we really know how things happen? Well, there's a genetic predisposition. You layer it on with the environmental factors, and then it's a baking soda and vinegar sort of situation.
When I was a kid, I would have very obsessive thoughts, and it was almost like extreme. It's like extreme superstition almost. It's like, oh, I didn't lift my feet when I went over the tracks, and now something bad's going to happen. So, but then I started to kind of grow out of it. It was actually starting to like affect my day-to-day routines and stuff to the point that I was like, what the hell am I doing? This is insanity. And so I don't know if I grew out of it or what I did. But then, I've also struggled with addiction and I had to go through treatment and stuff. And so I'm wondering now if maybe I do have I'm on the spectrum of some type of OCD.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of crossover too with ADHD and stuff. If it just presented itself as addiction as opposed to whatever, I don't know.
Completely. Like, and one of the things that we like kind of putting on my medical hat for youth is that those youth who are having substance disorders, up to 4 times as many youth with substance disorders have undiagnosed ADHD, right? So sometimes something that we see is really the shadow of what we need to diagnose, right? And that's the same thing. Like, I think we need to flip the script and go, okay, that's your presenting symptom, but what is underlying that? Just like the eating disorder that I had, it was less about the anorexia and more about the unresolved OCD, right? And I think that's the challenge with mental health. It is so complicated. It is so, and it's not and it shouldn't be a one size fits all. And when we try to make it a one size fits all, and of course we sometimes have to because there's only a finite number of medications what we have too. But that's where I have a lot of respect for, therapists and counselors and psychologists who can really hone in and kind of do some of the appropriate training, because that's not my field of expertise at all.
Yeah, I've just kind of come, like I've been advocating for like 8 years or something. I've had, a long mental health journey too. You said it was about 9 years that you kind of got diagnosed and started your journey. And I just within the last year or whatever have been realizing like a lot of time anxiety, depression, all these things are symptoms, like you said, of something bigger. Yeah. And when I do my talks now, because I do a lot of public speaking, I'm like, I make sure to point that out. I mean, not always. You can have generalized anxiety disorder, but odds are there's some kind of trauma or there's a disorder or there's something. Yeah.
Exactly. Like we need to start realizing too, like anxiety is an adjective, it's a symptom, and it's a diagnosis. So where are you in that, right? And just
Ah.
because I feel like the adolescents I work with love to say this, like, I feel anxious, so give me a pill. Like, it's not a vending machine, right? Sort of situation. So we have to go, like, the word emotion means energy and motion. It comes and goes. So are you allowing it to come and go, or is it affecting the day-to-day quality of your life, your school, your sleep, your functioning? Then we need to look at that. But the pendulum's almost swung the other way, that the minute I feel anything uncomfortable, I feel like I need to medicate it away. And that's what we just, it's another paradigm shift, right?
Will we ever get it right?
I
I mean, a lot of these diagnoses, they just came up with a name like 20 years ago. So it's in its infancy, I think.
Yes, exactly.
Tell me a little bit about your new book and about it.
So yeah, the book is behind me too. It was 2 years in the making. You know, it's really, I joke about it that it's my love letter to mental health too. So the reason the book was written is because I'm the medical director of the largest youth health center in British Columbia in Canada. So really, at the end of the day, we see youth between the ages of 12 and 24. In a month, we'll see, I think our last month we saw 660 patients. Like, it is phenomenally busy. And these are not quick walk-in appointments, right? These are youth who are struggling, and we will see everything from a headache to an ingrown toenail. It's not just mental health. It's whatever you need. We will see you for that. And we have counselors, we have social worker, we have nurses, nurse practitioners. So it's all under one roof.
Is this government ran? Like provincially ran? Awesome.
Yeah. So the concept is so important and so helpful that now they are creating more, it's called the foundries throughout British Columbia, because this is how, forget adults, we would need this kind of thing too, but adolescents, it's hard enough for them to go to one appointment, let alone 3 appointments. So can we keep it under one roof too? But alongside this work, I work at a school for kids that need an alternate learning environment. That the regular school system, for whatever reason, is not the right fit for them. They've either been asked to leave, told to leave, or choose to leave. And I sit there one day a week, and a lot of the stories from the book are from that kind of experience. They're all anonymous stories, but they're real a cumulative sense of patient stories that I've seen. And one of the key pieces is that if I asked a youth, do you care about yourself? Forget love yourself. Like, that was too much. Do you even just care about yourself? It was always swear word, I hate myself. This was the common response I got over and over again. So the premise of the book is that we need to build self-acknowledgement, mattering, which is a huge concept in mental health. You matter, you need to be here. How do you matter? Before we build self-awareness. Self-awareness and understanding your emotions and all of that is great. But we can't even, it's like going into the Friends episode of Monica's closet and opening that closet. Nobody wants to open that closet. You need to feel like you are here for a reason, and what you do actually people care about, and you matter to us. So that's the biggest trajectory of the book, and it ends with self-compassion and how you foster that too. So yeah, I think hopefully you might not remember the subjects, but you'll remember the stories after you read the book.
Wow. I did a bit of work in a school, very similar school.
Yeah.
I was like a mentor off and on. So yeah, that's amazing. Those kids are amazing.
Yeah. I always joke, I said, you've taught me more than like 12 years of medical. Like, there's no comparison. I learned about disease and illness. I didn't learn about how to really connect with people, foster relationships, take care of your emotions, all of that. But they are doing it at the fraction of my age. And at 14, 15, they've often lived 3 or 4 lives. Like, right. Just in terms of not by their choice, but what they've had to go through, so.
Yeah. Do you find that socioeconomics is a big factor in mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No one teaches you in medical school like they should. Ask about, is there food at home? When you open the fridge, what kind of food is there? Who's preparing the food? Do you have money for food? It's so easy for me to see, here's a medication. The harder part is, how are you going to go and get that? Can you afford the dispensing fee? These are the things, like, we think that we're doing you a service, but what you actually need is access, access to healthy food. I had this youth who says her stomach was hurting her so much. Things were not good digestively because all that was in the fridge, in the freezer was like pizza pops and frozen foods and those types of things. And she's just like, I really want something. And ironically, you think that kids just want to eat frozen stuff. She's like, I want to eat something fresh. And she was too young to drive or any of that too. So access is something, and asking the right questions is huge.
I had pizza pops for lunch. Not gonna lie. I told you I don't make much money doing a podcast.
The whole thing will just circle back to pizza pops. I think that is, I love
it. Maybe they can sponsor.
Yeah, there you go. You let me know if that ever happened. That would be
awesome. But it's so true with those kids too, that the amount, because of the socioeconomic situation they're in, there's also so much more trauma, and what people don't realize is trauma can then cause trauma. So it's like this constant cycle of, I don't have much money, so I'm stuck in this neighborhood, and there's crazy things that happen in this neighborhood, and so then you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Oh. Well, I was just having a conversation with a patient not that long ago, and she said she had to learn at the age of 4 that I can't control my parents. I can't control their drinking. I can't control the behavior of my stepfather. I can't control my living situation right now. But at the age of 6, when she went into school, she realized I can control that I show up for school, that I hand in my assignments. That is at such a tender age to be able to go, this is what I can do. This is what is what is out of my control. And that's a really hard lesson to have to learn. But I was so proud of her for at least holding on to the things. Like, she's showing up for school, she's handing her in her work, she's doing well at school. That is what's going to set her apart and set her far. And that's what we had to put a spotlight on, that this is what you can do. Otherwise, feeling powerless in the face of ongoing trauma is just a recipe for ongoing adversity, right? Those two things just don't mesh well together.
Yeah. You have to be careful then too with that kind of attitude that student has to then not turn it into like perfectionism, or if she has kids, to like force this kind of thinking on them. And
True.
True.
Oh, exactly.
God, it's so complicated.
It's so complicated. Yeah, it is. It really is, right? And just, that's why I think, like, in this model that we have where we see patients, we don't get paid by the patient, we get paid by the hour. So it really depends on, I can spend the time, I can ask you the questions, and I can actually take the time to listen to your answers. It's not about asking the questions, it's about actually listening to the answers to them. And just, sometimes I don't know the response because it's too heavy and it's too hard, but just sitting with them and making them feel like an adult actually cares, to me, that's half the battle, and that's half the medicine right there.
I have a thing I say in my talks. I'm going to make it about me now.
Yeah.
I hate the term man cave, and anytime some macho guy says that, I always say, oh, that sounds like a gay bar, and then they get all bothered. But I'm like, so I always tell men, show us it doesn't have to be men, but cave, Kave, compassion, acceptance, validation, and empathy. And if you can do those things, if you're a nurse, if you're a teacher, if you're whatever, if you can show people those things, I mean, you're going to make a difference in someone's life, whether you mean to or not. So, just by listening, like you said, it's like just that validation. They're like, holy shit, this lady's listening to me and nodding her head and validating everything I'm saying and accepting where I am.
That's it. Like, I think now looking back with the book, I think self-acknowledgement is one thing, but what we all want is to feel accepted for where we are right now. Like, we all know that we have to improve and all of that's fine, but we just want to feel seen, heard, and accepted. And I love that cave thing. That's really good. That's really good. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Thanks. I can't remember how I did it or why I did it, but I did it.
It works, yeah.
Did the kids know you were taking their stories and putting it in a book?
Because it's a compilation of stories, right? So it's not like one patient. It's a little bit from this patient, a little bit from this patient, from this patient. So that way it's more anonymous. And then we had to change all the genders and the ages and all that stuff. But the concepts or the theories are from what I've seen before too. So But yeah, I think for me, it's like, how can I share some of the lessons with them, right, that I've learned?
Yeah, I've often wondered that too. Like when I worked in addictions and stuff, it's like, oh, this would make a great article or something. It's like, but it's not my story. How do
Yeah.
I, how do you go about that?
Yeah, 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 exactly. Having to be mindful of that too, right? So, and then invariably I share. I can have leeway with my personal story too, so that's peppered in there and sets the foundation a little bit too, because it's really easy to say, "Oh, I'm the doctor" and whatever, but no, like I've been down in the trenches and I know what that feels like, and hopefully that makes it more relatable.
Absolutely. I found when I worked in addictions, people really gravitated towards me because I had that life experience too.
Yes. Yes.
Actually, that's all I had. I didn't have any formal education. So, no offense to people that only have formal education. Like, yeah, I mean, people go in good intentions and
Yes.
everything. So, I don't want to discourage people. I don't know why some people prefer other people over other people when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Exactly. But I think, yeah, I think when you are struggling, I think we almost have a really good radar to go, this person gets it, and this, you know what I mean? Like I think there's just that feeling of I think I can see that you see me, and whatever, maybe that's what resonated so well for the people that you were working with too, that you got it.
The cave.
The cave. Come back to the cave. The cave. There you go. Exactly.
Do you see a counselor or a therapist, not just for your OCD and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but working with youth and the public, and you must hear a lot of stuff that's not great to hear sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I should be.
Ah!
I know. I know.
I knew you were going to say that.
Oh, I'll call my when things were obviously really bad, and even up until maybe last year, I would kind of check in with the counselor. But isn't life so funny that, and it's so easy to dish advice. It's so easy for me to tell my patients, oh, do this and do that, and they do. But when it comes to yourself, you're like, oh, I'm good. Like, I'm good. And then until things go, like, it almost has to take the point of kind of really going downhill for you to go, oh, shoot, like I need to do those things again, right? But, there's excuses. I've got 3 kids, or I've got this, or I don't have time for that too. So be the first one to call myself out on it, that I give advice really easily, and I should probably take that same advice. So
I'm not going to lie, I'm the same way. I do public talking and everything, and then next thing you know, I'm miserable, and it's like, oh, shit.
yeah,
I'm doing everything I'm telling people not to do.
I know. Sometimes I'll stand up on that stage, and it's like, it's not because I'm an expert in this. It's because I am figuring this stuff out too. Like, like the
Right. And I think people like that honesty
Yeah.
and that. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we're never cured, right? It's something we were always going to struggle with. But the nice thing is now, I'm assuming you're like me, that I'm self-aware enough now that I don't need, the biggest red flags. It's like a yellow flag, and it's like, oh, I'm self-aware enough now to go, oh shit, something. Yeah, okay. What am I not doing?
That's actually that's a very good point. Yeah, I never thought about it that way. Like, just, yeah, you don't need to have like the 6
Rock bottom.
alarm bells going off to go, okay, yeah, yeah.
That, and I have a wonderful spouse that's also, has seen me go through stuff and has educated herself a bit and be like dropping hints before. My one friend calls her a canary. It's like a canary in the coal mine.
Yes. We all need a good, that's beautiful, right? Because sometimes the people that closest to you can go, okay, like tap you on the shoulder to say, okay, something's up too. But you speak to the fact that like having those habits, the type of work, we do and things like that can be really hard. And hearing the stories, and sometimes I was even saying, I don't know where to put all those stories, like, because they're so heavy that sometimes it can feel like it weighs you down too. So, I have struggled with that. And I don't want to lose what I'm doing because I can't handle the stories. And I've come close to that before, to kind of say, hands up, I'm out. Like, I want to deal with dermatology now or something like that. Like, just, so yeah.
You can write a dermatology book.
There you go. Yes, next time we see all about eczema or something like that. I don't know.
Dandruff.
Yes, exactly. 300-page book on dandruff. Yeah, there you go.
Well, and I mean, for anything like me, you can't help but you get passionate and you get in there, and then you start digging, and it's like, this is great, and then you stop digging and you look up and go, holy shit. I'm in a really deep hole now.
I'm in a really deep hole. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
One thing I've learned through my experience with mental health and addictions is you never know what you need to hear until you hear it. Make sure to rate and review on Apple and to tell as many people as you can about the podcast so others can hear something they need to hear from one of my guests. After all, this is a free mental health service, which is a rare thing, so why not share with as many people as you can?
Shopping is hard, right? But there's a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And she sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what I love and send back the rest. It's so easy. Personal styling for everyone. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same?
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
You found your person. Now let the Knot help you with everything else. The Knot connects you to the wedding inspo, vendors, venues, and planning tools you need to make your day totally you. Having helped plan 25 million weddings, we've got your back when it comes to every little detail like RSVPs, budgets, and more. Because your wedding comes to life with the connections that matter the most. Get started at theknot.com/audio. The Knot. Let's plan your wedding together.
Exactly. I wonder, I'm not sure if that's your experience too, but speaking, writing, doing that actually helps me process some of the stuff I'm seeing. So I do find that inadvertently that helps me take all this mess and put it into something more tangible. I don't know. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've been doing a lot of speaking lately, and I just moved to Regina. We used to live in a really small town, and we just moved here this summer, and so I was like looking at part-time jobs to work with like homeless people or unhoused people, and doing working in addictions and mental health and stuff. And it was the other day I just realized I think that might be too much. It's like, so now I got a part-time job that I'm going to be starting, and it's like live theater. I'm bartending in between,
Exactly.
And I'm like, okay, this isn't giving me anxiety thinking about this.
Perfect. Exactly. Because honestly, you do need to offload. Like, it's important just to have like that valve that opens that goes, okay, like I don't need to be. Yeah. And I find that these conversations help me do that personally as well.
Right. And it was a conversation like this that made me realize, like, maybe I need balance because I don't want to burn out, because I do enjoy doing this and having talks like this. It's a little different when I'm talking with a professional, but when I'm talking to someone who's talking about their most traumatic events and stuff for the podcast or in public or whatever, it's like, well, I don't want to stop doing that. And I don't want to overload.
Completely. Yeah. No, good for you. Good for you.
So, I think we should consider seeing a counselor soon, maybe.
I think so. Let's do that. Yes, I think that is, I know. I'm taking a lot of things away from this. The cave thing, for sure. The counselor. Yes.
Canary.
The canary thing. Yes, very important. Yeah. So, but it's good to feel like you're in a common space. Like, I think both of us have a lot. And I love how you can approach it from so many different angles. Right? But yet there's this shared value system of, and maybe it's just because we both have walked the road, right? We both know what it feels like. So
yeah. Plus, I'm just so grateful that diagnosis of ADHD, like it was, that alone was validating. Yeah. Just like you're saying, it was like, oh my God, all these dots finally connected. It was like, wait a minute. I'm not a lazy addict. I just have a brain that's labeled this way.
Well, oh my goodness. And it's so funny, like in medical school, we got like zero training about ADHD. Like it was just it's like zero. And now we're just learning so much more about it and understanding it more and seeing the impact that good treatment has on people. Like I've seen people turn their entire lives around. And it's actually really gratifying to, especially I think women too are often very underdiagnosed, misdiagnosed with the inattention type too. So I had a mom one time who almost burnt her entire house down because she was so hyper focused on doing a puzzle. Like she had to finish that puzzle. Like, so sometimes with ADHD, we don't realize that it's not about not being attentive. It's about switching focus is really hard. Right? So.
You're telling me. Yeah. Yeah. You must have, once you got your diagnosis of pure OCD, you must have did a deep dive.
Yeah, I know. And then it's like that slippery, and it's funny being a doctor and Googling too, because you still do that, right? You still want to know, like, so I spent oh my gosh, like, is this symptom normal? Is this, like the typical thing? My husband's like, you need to stop doing that too. But for OCD, one of the biggest hidden compulsions is reassurance that I'm not going to do that, right? I'm not going to act on that. I'm not going to fill in the blank. And although that feels like putting a Band-Aid on a scab, it doesn't, it's not, you're not really treating the root of the problem too. So that I lived my life for many years in reassurance seeking. So, yeah. Yeah.
Growing up, what was your life like growing up? Did you grow up in Canada and have Canadian parents or?
Yeah, so my parents are from East Africa. So, they're from Uganda. My grandparents are from India. But when they came to Canada with the exodus of Idi Amin in 1972. So basically it was like, seriously, he had a dream that all brown people should leave. That was kind of how it went down. So in 90 days, they were like up and left. And it was you leave or you face the wrath of what could happen. So it was like, get on a plane and get out. And luckily my dad went to the UK to study and my mom went to Canada. And then they ended up meeting up again too. So I think when you have parents who come to this country as refugees and all of that sort of stuff, it was very much like education, like don't screw this up. Like, it's been, and I get it, like huge sacrifices. My mom landed in Canada. The next day she got a job as a waitress, like $3 an hour. Like those are the types of stories they tell too. So, so I think, and I did enjoy going to school and all the rest of it, but I think in that my identity got so convoluted as being one and the same with my academics. Like my identity was the score that I got on an exam. And if I didn't get a good score, that meant I was not worthy of anything too. So when you have it all wrapped up in a letter grade or in a percentage, that becomes a very slippery slope.
Right. And what you're telling me, I've heard from a lot of kids that have parents that immigrated to North America, whether it's Korean or whatever. And I mean, that's a lot of pressure put on a kid. And the same thing, it's like what's that? Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
So, your parents' lives were in danger. So this is what we're going to focus on. And if you're a little obsessive, like, that doesn't matter. Just get good grades.
Exactly. And I just and I think, there's that need to please I had such high standards for myself, but it all becomes a very perfect storm of thinking that is my claim to fame. Like I was not into sports. I was not into drama. I was not in the popular crowd. Like I'm going to latch all my energy onto this. And the OCD, I think the obsessive nature just didn't help the situation at all too. So I think now it's so nice to go, yes, academics and medicine are a part of my life, but I can also be liked and admired and honored and respected for other things that have nothing to do with the letters behind my name. In grade 12, I didn't have many friends at all, but the one friend I did have came up to me and said, the only reason I've been friends with you is so I could cheat off you the entire time in high school. Right?
So were you flattered?
I was so... I was like, thank you.
I thought I was pretty, but okay.
I know, exactly. So it's, funny, not funny, but those types of experiences only solidify that you only see me. My only worth to you is how I can help you academically, right? So we all have that in our life too. And I think sometimes it's nice now, in my adulthood now as a mom too, to think about how can I instill that in my kids, that this is one facet of you, but you have all of this other stuff to offer too.
Yeah. Again, balance.
Balance. Yeah, exactly.
Culturally, if you did grow up, sorry, was it Uganda?
Yeah.
You said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If you had grown up there and you were showing traits of OCD, culturally, is there mental health a thing?
Yeah. You know what? I think especially in our East Indian background too, and I think in many cultures as well too, it's just, I was joking around with somebody, like my family loves, and I love them, and they really try to be supportive, but a very common phrase in our family is snap out of it.
Snap out of it.
Yeah, exactly, right? And it reminds me of that Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie kind of episode of just this, and then I'm good, and it doesn't, I wish, once again, I wish a mental health was a rash. It would make it a lot easier. I wish I could snap on and off like a snap button. It doesn't work that way. And I think the book is a testament to undoing some of that learning for me too, because medical school only helped me learn about disease and illness. It didn't help me learn about anything about mental health.
Yeah, that's kind of neat that it's like your side gig is the mental health part. But
exactly. Yeah.
Being raised by boomers, it was not so much school, but it was being productive and making money and going to work every day and work overtime if it's given to you and make hay when the sun shines. And as someone that in their early 30s started to get overwhelmed with jobs, because I had an amazing work ethic from 15 to 30 years old, and then I just started burning out, and that's when I started going on meds and seeing therapists and taking time off work for anxiety and stuff. And then you have your parents' voice in your head, and it's oh God, that's a whole other thing. So I can relate, but differently, right? My way.
But that's the whole point too, right?
Yeah.
The voice in the head, whatever that is, right? If it's either, for our family, was leave no stone unturned, which basically meant any academic opportunity, you go, 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 go. In your case, it was that work ethic, right? I like that, make hay when the sun shines. So, and it's really hard to go, who am I and who, it's like an elastic band ball. It's all tangled up. So it's really hard to make sense of it too. And sometimes now, in my adulthood, I can look back and go, okay, that's why I made the decisions that I did, Right.
Yeah. Have you looked at your parents at all and seen OCD?
No, but I think, actually, I shouldn't say that. I think OCPD, the personality disorder, where that is more very different than OCD, where it's very perfectionistic. Things need to be in order. There's some of that too.
Gotcha.
But I should say they've come from the time of me going through this, they have had to come such a long way in their understanding too. When you have a loved one or a daughter or son or whatever who's going through this too, you have to leave your own idiosyncrasies at the door and go, okay, how am I going to be here, support you? And it was me taking medication, me seeing the psychiatrist, me going to the therapist, because you have to dig yourself out of it. And then you kind of can look back and say, okay, do you want to join me for this journey?
Absolutely. Because I'm there's no way you could tell me my dad does not have ADHD as well. And it's so funny because maybe that's part of his teaching technique was he was feeling inadequate or so whatever because of his undiagnosed ADHD and pushing stuff be more productive. And it was what I mean? So humans are weird and complex, and having kids is a bit of a mirror, and they reflect your thoughts, and then all you can do is try and do better.
Yeah, absolutely.
This has nothing to do with the book either, but I'm curious culturally. So now I'm getting, I don't know what the word is, but culturally, so people like us have existed for millennia. So every culture, every civilization clearly needs brains like ours.
Yeah.
But I always find it fascinating when there are cultures that like don't believe in ADHD or they don't whatever. And then other ones really celebrate that kind of personality and stuff. What do you? I mean, this is a complex question. We can just skip it if you want. But what do you think neurodiversity brings to the table when it comes to society and having it function for millennia?
Yeah. That's actually a really good question. I think one of the facets that it speaks to is that one of the easiest ways for a very long time that we could start to think of people as intellectual was just with IQ. And now we know that IQ is just like, a drop in the bucket of what you could really think about when you look at the whole person's intellect. EQ being a much better example of, how someone actually can perform and relate to others. And I think neurodiversity allows us that bandwidth to actually have space for people who have different ways of expressing their emotional intelligence. Forget their intellectual intelligence too, right? Because some of the brightest people that I've ever met are those with ADHD. Like they have such a capacity to uncover complex problems for complex solutions for different problems, or their ability to really focus in on one thing that they really find interesting too. So I think just like with race or differences in how we express ourselves in so many other ways too, it just allows us a different way of looking at the same problem. I think that's what neurodiversity allows too. And anybody
It brings diversity.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, it's too uniform, right? And even with OCD as well, I have to sometimes remind myself it's that this is the same brain that allowed me to write this book. This is the same brain that allows me to speak creatively, write creatively. So I have to honor that too. I think maybe that's a real message that, yes, we are neurodivergent in our own unique ways, but that doesn't mean that we also have to love what our brain has done for us so far. Like, yes, it can be hard, but it can also be beautiful at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what I find with my brain is because I talk to some people and they're like, oh, ADHD is a superpower. And I'm like, bullshit. I mean, it's polarizing is what it is.
Yeah.
It's like, there are these wonderful things that I like having in my brain, but it comes with this extra crap too.
Exactly.
There is no balance. I talk about balance.
Yeah. Sometimes I tell my husband that I say OCD feels like wearing a huge backpack in a room full of champagne glasses. That's what it feels like. And all I can hear is the shattering of glass everywhere, and all you can see is nothing. You don't see the champagne glasses that are falling constantly and cracking on the floor. And you don't feel the weight of this rock-filled backpack. That's what it feels like for me on the bad days. And on good days when I can be creative, it feels wonderful, right? So there's space for both, but I think maybe the lesson is that when we speak to each other, who each have separate but relatable conditions, we can understand how hard it can be on the hard days.
Yeah. Have you found that you gravitate towards other neurodivergent people? Because I do. I look around my friend group. I'm like, oh my God, we're all a little weird. There's no bankers in here that are just straight. It's like we're all characters.
We're all characters. Yeah. I think in some ways, for sure, I think I gravitate. What I gravitate the most to is like moms who can have an honest conversation about how they are. I can't gravitate towards fakeness anymore. Like, I think in the professional world too, there's such a like aura of being buttoned up and everything is perfect and all that stuff. And I used to be one of those people, but I think now I can get down and have a real conversation with somebody and actually feel like we're speaking and not just like chatting about nothing, that to me is what I want more of in my life.
So when you were like that, was that pre-diagnosis?
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. That'd be like university days or even early med school days or
Like masking.
yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah, for sure. That's all. It was a pair of jeans that fit. It fit. I didn't know how else to be, right? And I was too scared of the alternate. I didn't even have a name for this thing, first of all. Second of all, I thought I was just weird. Third of all, I thought I was going to be found out. Like, there's just so many layers to all of this, too. So, like, you don't go around saying, yeah, actually, I have thoughts of hurting or harming my family. So, how are you doing? Like, like, let's just, like, what? So, like, now it's great that I can joke about it with my husband, or you put some light about it, too. But back then, it's like the more, kind of cleaned up I am on the outside, then the less you're going to see how fragile I am on the inside.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I've always kind of not enjoyed my spending time with people that aren't sincere, I guess.
Exactly. And maybe I wonder, like, on this podcast too, you must be able to, like, there's really few professions that you can go, or even platforms that you can go, okay, cameras rolling, we're going to actually connect deeply. Like, we don't know each other, we've never met each other before, and you can have these real conversations, and that's really cool. Like, that's what I really like about being on people's podcasts. Like, that's probably why you love it too. So,
man, I get like emotionally attached to so many of my guests that
yeah.
I spoke with them 3 years ago and we still talk weekly. It's like, yeah. I mean, there are some people that come on that are like, I have to be done by 2 because I have another interview. It's like, okay, well, whatever.
Yeah.
It was a nice chat and everything, but
but exactly, right? So
yeah.
But that's what makes it authentic, right? So
yeah, right. And I think of I can't think of the guy's name now. Gabor Mate, and connection is the opposite of addiction. I don't know if that's his exact quote or not, but it's so true. It's like when I was drinking and when I was masking and stuff. Yeah, I had drinking buddies that I hung out with all the time, and I didn't like them. It's like, now that I'm sober, it's like, oh, connection is what I was looking for. Yeah. And now I do this daily in my basement.
Yeah. So cool, right? Exactly. There is that, like, beautiful side to, like, social media and technology and podcasting and all of this stuff where you, like, yeah, there's a lot of problems with some of that stuff, but this is where, like, the beauty shines, right? That you can actually have these real conversations and about people who, like, really care deeply about this stuff too. So, no, I'm so honored to at least share part of my story and to open up to you and your audience about something that really touches a lot, especially a lot of women's lives.
You have another interview at 2, don't you?
Yeah. Yes, I know. I don't. I was gonna make that joke too. Like, yeah, no, I need to go eat pizza pops or, I think one thing to mention too is postpartum OCD and postpartum psychosis typically is commonly misdiagnosed as postpartum psychosis. And that is one of the biggest things that women, if they finally do end up getting taken in, gone to the hospital and see a psychiatrist or whatnot, if you are given the diagnosis of a postpartum psychosis, you can imagine how terrifying and awful and how maybe you can be wrongly medicated for that too. So those two things are completely opposite, but one can get mistaken for the other. So, man,
it would be nice if we could just have blood tests and be like, okay, it says here you have this. Because there is so much overlap and so many similar symptoms and
you're telling me. Yes. Yeah, let's check your sugar and let's check your diabetes level and then let's check your anxiety.
Yep, it's PMDD. It's not bipolar.
That's what it is. Yeah. Maybe yeah.
How is postpartum psychosis the opposite of postpartum OCD?
Yeah. So by opposite, I mean the biggest difference between them is that if you are we talk about the idea of hurting or harming your child, which can be very common between both of them. Postpartum OCD, it's called an ego dystonic thought, that you do not want to have that thought. That thought is repulsive to you. You would do anything to get rid of the thought, but it's like, don't think of a purple elephant, just keeps coming back over and over again. With postpartum psychosis, it's not that you want to, but you are in a psychotic stage where that thought is not as repulsive to you, if that makes any sense, right? So that's kind of, the thought can be the same, but the origin of it and what you feel when you feel that thought is completely different, right?
I see.
And of course, you can see how those two things could be misdiagnosed, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I guess as a doctor, you have to learn to ask the right questions to be able to do that. Know the differences and...
Exactly. And postpartum OCD is much more common than postpartum psychosis, which is very much more rare. Happens, of course, but much more rare.
Thank you so very much, Doctor. Very grateful, very, very appreciative of you and your work. Be sure to check the show notes to find Dr. Alibhia's links to her book and to her Instagram, where she's very active on there. And hey, there's a new episode on Tuesdays now with my good friend Taz Norris. He's a legendary stand-up comedian. Taz is a very, very experienced, life-experienced man with all types of mental health stories and diagnoses and stuff. So we just BS and joke around a little bit and talk mental health. There's going to be some other stuff on those Tuesdays. We might start inviting people to chat with us live, or maybe play some kind of games or something. It's going to evolve. So, but anyway, Taz is a super funny guy, super intelligent guy, and you should really check those episodes out too. If you'd like some merch for this podcast or anything about this podcast, even if you want me to do some speaking engagements or whatever, please go to my website, www.bunnyhugspodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, please remember to make your beds and take your meds. Bye.